So in today's tutorial, what we're going to work on is actually tidying up the table that we generated in yesterday's tutorial. And as you can see, we're displaying some information about the redirects for this particular URL, but it's not very pretty. And there's lots of different things that we can do with this, but we're just going to put some headings in, add a bit of padding and just make the text a little bit more legible, because obviously it's a little bit small on the screen as it's coming out at the moment. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to actually go back to our TypeScript code, and we're going to generate a heading for the table. And I'm going to be a little bit lazy here because what we should really do is separate the body of the table. So using a body, or rather a T-body tag inside of the table, and then the same sort of thing for the head as well. We should have a T-head tag, but we can get away with this with our HTML. The browser will still be able to interpret what we're trying to do. So just to save you from going through the process and watching me go through the process of creating all these individual tags, we're going to take a few shortcuts here. So essentially we're just going to create a row and then put some TH tags inside of it, which will be our heading. So let's create that row to start off with. So we'll say table heading row, and we're going to use the same process that we used yesterday. So I'm going to demonstrate both again. So we'll create a new tr tag, and then with that table heading row variable, we've got a reference to the new element that we've just created. I'm just going to again select its inner HTML property and assign it a value. So this is the shortcut that we saw yesterday as well. So you can mix and match or use whichever feels best for you, just to generate those blocks of HTML that you want to insert into your web app. So what are we going to put into the inner HTML? Well, we don't need to use any special variables here because we're just putting some labels in essentially. So we'll say the first column is for accessed on, and then for the second column, we'll just say location. And just close that up there. And then with that in place, all we need to do really on the table element that we've generated above is just append the table heading row element onto that. And if we skip back over to the app, you can see there we've got our labels appearing. So all we need to do really now is just add some styling just to make it a little bit more legible. And this is the opportunity if you're working on your own app to get creative, but we're just going to keep things simple in this tutorial today. So over here in our style sheet for the stats application, we've already set the color to white, but let's target the table heading elements on the page, and we'll just say the border bottom, for example, is 1 pixel, solid, and white again. And for each of the elements on the page, so for each of the table heading tags, but also the TD cells as well, we'll just add some padding onto those. So 1 rem should be enough. So if we go back over to the app, you can see there now it looks a bit more like a table, and we can actually see some of the text a bit better. But let's make it a bit bigger too as well. So let's set the font size for both of those to be, let's say, 1.5 rems. And if we go back over, it's a little bit more legible. You can actually read the text a bit better. And of course, if you want to get a bit more creative at this point, then feel free to go away and create a nice looking table. In fact, one thing I will do actually is just make the background of the table a little bit darker. So we'll say the background image is the gradient again. So we'll just take the transparency through, but we'll just darken it a little bit more so that the text it stands out a bit more. So you might remember this from when we set up the web app previously. So we'll set a linear gradient with an RGBA value. So 0, 0, 0 is black. And if we say the transparency, or the opacity rather, on that is 0.8, and then just copy that across. What we should find in the app is now we're getting a darker background on there, and but you should just see some of the image behind it coming through. And in fact, what we could do is just make that a little bit less, just so you can see a bit more of the image coming through there. So that just helps the text to stand out a little bit more and differentiate it. Not the best styling, but as I say, feel free to go ahead and come up with a fantastic looking table. So in the next tutorial, we're going to look at something else in the table. So we're currently just spitting out the ISO string that's stored in the database, which kind of works because you can kind of see when this was accessed from in the exact millisecond. But it's not very user friendly. It's not very readable for humans to just take a quick glance and say when was this actually accessed. So what we're going to do is actually take that date string and put it into something a bit more readable to populate our stats table. But that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.